Hey guys, welcome. For today's practice, we're going to explore a little the softer side of yin. I know that myself and students that tell me we often choose yin as a practice when we need something a little quieter or a little gentler. And I think that that can be the case. And there are times where yin can be a fairly intense practice, right? Some poses, some days that we're really working in yin towards where that edge of sensation is. And that in itself, the holding within that sensation can make it a little different practice sometimes than we think of what like a restorative practice is. So today will be a little bit of a hybrid. We're not going to quite go to restorative, but those poses and an approach to a yin practice that gives us a little gentler, more supported place when that's what we need, because I think that there's really a time and place for all different kinds of practices. So with that, I'd encourage you to have a little extra support for today's practice. I'm going to demo a lot of stuff with just a couple of pillows. So if you have that, that's a nice set of props to have nearby. If you've got your regular bolster and blocks, you can use that too. So we're going to start on our bellies in a supported Sphinx pose. And for this one, I'm going to start with one pillow sideways. Right, lay my chest there. And then maybe even a block nearby if you want that. Great. So I like to have the pillow. I've got one. You could use two if you want a little extra support. Again, erring on the side of maybe what's a little bit softer today. And then having the block underneath your forehead. Right. If you don't have a block, you can let your chin rest towards your chest. And just take a moment to set up something that feels really comfortable, really supported. Right. So there might be a little sensation, but I'm going to encourage you probably over and over again throughout the practice not to come to that edge, right? Which is what we often do in our yin practice, but to let yourself back away from that a little bit. And so that might mean a little bit more space between your legs. That might mean extra support. And so you find the place where your body can start to settle in. And if you haven't already, see what it feels like to close your eyes or just let your gaze get soft. And start to tune in here to the sensation of breath. Right, with your belly down, you might really be able to feel that feedback as the breath starts to come a little fuller or a little slower. It doesn't have to be a big dynamic breath. Sometimes that really shifts us out of the yin state. But just somewhere that feels supportive, something that feels nourishing. And just let the breath start to slow down. And depending on when you're practicing or what you've done in your day, it might take a little time to settle in. So just be patient with your breath. And notice here where you can start to soften your body just a little bit more. Right, like I feel like I almost found that one other layer that wasn't quite letting go. And take about 5 more breaths here. And just move slowly as you're ready. You can slide your block off to the side. You can move your pillow wherever it's easiest, out in front or off to the side. Come all the way down onto your belly, stack your hands, and just let your hips really gently sway side to side. Okay, from here, bring your arms out wide. We'll do this. Have your pillows nearby where you can reach them. And then bring your arms out wide, right? Bend your right arm and then roll up onto your left side, right? So that your arm is right out in front, or sorry, right out to the side, and you're rolling all the way up onto the left side. So this one, right, for some of us, can bring up a lot of sensation. So I'm going to give you a couple options here for a little bit more support. One that I love is one or even two pillows snuggled into your belly, and then let yourself lean out of the pose a little bit. So again, that you're not coming right to that end point of sensation. You might feel something like a pleasant stretch, but there's still a lot of support and softening. Right? And maybe instead of stepping your top foot all the way behind, just let the legs stagger, stay stacked, or even step a foot in front if that's a comfortable place to be. And if it takes a lot of effort to hold that, just let it go. And let the side of your head rest. You can just soften or close your eyes. Are you able to drop right back into that breath that you established in the first pose, in our Sphinx pose? As you let the body and the breath really start to drop in, just notice where the mind is. Right? Sometimes it's the physical body that is our big challenge in staying. Some days it's the thoughts that are on the spin cycle. So start to find what helps you to stay anchored, to stay a little steadier with your thoughts. That might not mean they go away altogether. It's something to help them get a little space, a little quiet, and that might mean anchoring to your breath. That might be a mantra or a phrase that you enjoy. But as much as you're giving the body and the breath a little space and a little softness, you're inviting that into the mind as well. Let's take about 5 more breaths on this side too. And then as you're ready, just move slowly. You can set your pillow forward if you're using that, or bolster. Come back to your belly, stack your hands, turn your head to one side or the other, and just take a few breaths. And we'll just move into the second side. You can bring your arms out wide, right? Bend your left arm, roll up onto your right side. Right, and then I'll offer the same options, right? So if you're here and are like, that's great, it feels supported, it's not my edge of sensation, stay. If it feels like a little bit more support would be nice there, maybe one or two pillows or your bolster. Anything that's going to let you lean maybe out of the shape a little bit. Let your head soften. You might even want a pillow there. Find the place that works best for your legs. And then close your eyes. Drop into breath. And release the effort. I know a teacher I used to work with who had one of my favorite descriptions that differentiated yin and restorative. And she would always say that yin is like a deep tissue massage. Right? It gets effective, and there's times that you are breathing into the pose, but you're really trying not to tighten up, to tense up, right? That the goal is still to create some space and some softening. There just might be a fair amount of sensation along that path. But she would say restorative is more just like a really lovely Swedish spa relaxation massage. There's no sensation. Well, there's no edge. And the goal really is more to settle the nervous system. Right? And they're both really beneficial. They just act on us in different ways. And sometimes what we need is the goldilocks. Right? Not too much, not too little, but that place right in between. I'm often a big fan of the goldilocks. Right? We can sometimes really play the edges, right? Going at full force until we need to crash and rest. The Goldilocks can help us to find that balanced place between the two. And so this last little bit of time here on this side, I invite you to notice thoughts. And just like your body, if it's taking a little time to settle in, be patient. And let's take about 5 more breaths. As you're ready, one more time. Come back to your belly, stack your hands, turn your head the opposite direction, and take a few breaths here. And from here, we're going to come into child's pose. Right, so in that same thread, I invite you to find a little bit of extra support, and that might be a blanket or a pillow behind your knees. Right, that's really nice for some of us with knee stuff, and maybe a blanket down your belly, or that might be 2 blankets snuggled in between your knees that you can lean forward and lie down there. This usually means it feels better to turn your head to one side or the other so that you can breathe. So let yourself take a little time to set up what feels good so that you can settle in. And once you're there, again, let eyes get heavy or closed. Feel your breath. And just allow the weight of your body to really settle in. Lean into the extra support. Can you let the hips soften back anymore? And so it just feels fully like you're really surrendering to gravity. And you're just working to find that Goldilocks point. Right? Enough, but not too much. Right? Depending on our personality type, I think we're either drawn to going all the way to that full edge most of the time, right? That it doesn't feel effective unless we're not. Or sometimes on the other side, there's that draw to just the really gooey restorative type practices. Often, a little bit of balance is the key. If you find yourself feeling a little fidgety, see where it feels like you can sink in a little heavier. And start to offer a little bit more quiet space within the poses. Use that time to really check in with what the mind is doing. And does it seem to want to drift in those quieter spaces? And where can you keep it anchored? And take about 5 more breaths here. And just move slowly. As you're ready, you're going to ease your way back out. Going to slide any support that you're using off to the side, up to the front of your mat. And then just take a moment to open up your knees as you stretch one leg back and then the other. You can rock back and forth a little bit on toes. And we're going to come all the way to sitting. So if you have a blanket or even a throw pillow, something like that, you want to sit up on for a little bit more support, that in itself can give you a little bit more restful pose. Okay, legs wide. And so a few things here. For some of us, forward folds are really soothing and grounding and settling for the nervous system. For some of us who have less mobility along that back line of the body, they can be the opposite. They can be a little agitating. So if you're someone that has a little less range of motion there, I'm going to suggest pillows under your knees. Let the legs have a little bit more support, and you can stay upright, right? If you don't have a lot of mobility, this is probably going to bring you some stretch. And if you do have a little bit more, you can set up your pillows one or two folded on top of one another so that you have somewhere to rest with your forward fold, right? So you may not even fold forward. You might stay seated upright because that's where there's just a little bit of sensation without having to come all the way to that edge. Right? So take a moment, play with your props. Where is the right place to be? Even if that's all the way sitting up with support underneath your knees. And once you've settled into wherever is the right place today, right, just make sure. Does it feel like if you're a regular practitioner of yin, right, that kind of habit to come in and find the edge, if that's rearing its head, and it feels like to back out a little bit. Or you've set up so much support that you don't feel anything at all. You might be erring towards restorative. And it's not that one's inherently good or bad. It's just a practice of playing with the balance of the two. And I think when we ask ourselves to do that, to do something a little different, we have to really be mindful and pay attention to what's happening in our body. We know that in general, habits are easy to slip into. When we ask that habit to shift a little bit, we have to pay attention. Listen to our bodies, listen to our breath, and see where is that just right spot for this practice today. And as you offer yourself a little bit quieter space, notice if it's easy to settle in or if it's challenging to settle in. Give yourself about 5 more breaths here. And slowly, when you're ready, you can start to help yourself back up. And if you've got support under your knees, slide that out. You're using it under your chest. And set your pillows over towards the right side of your mat. Use your hands behind your knees to help them together. And I'm just going to start with the soles of the feet together and the knees out wide. We're not going to stay like this, just use it as the setup. Okay, and then from here, bring your left foot back. You can play a little with the angle of the knee to see what works. And if you're on your blanket or a pillow and that doesn't feel great, just slide it out for this one. And then you're gonna bring your right shin a little bit more parallel. All right, turn and twist over your support, your stack of pillows, your bolster, whatever you've got, hand on either side. And as you settle yourself into the twist, just press a little bit more into your right hand. And that's gonna help roll the ribs back, hopefully, and then come forward onto that support. And you can look in the same direction as your knees, or you can turn your head and look behind if that feels like a strain on your neck. Again, err on the side of a little bit more support. And your back hip definitely lifts up off the mat for this one, so no need to feel like you need to keep both hips grounded down. And heavy through your eyes. And even with your breath, can you find that place that feels full, but it's not requiring a ton of effort? And especially in the twist here, that there's enough room for the breath. And if the amount of sensation really changes throughout the pose, like it becomes a lot, just let yourself back out and give it more support. As when we're looking for that middle ground, we're often recalibrating from moment to moment. And just keep inviting attention back to breath, back to something that's your anchor. So that your mind can start to find that steadier balance point as well. Let's take about 5 more breaths on this side. Just gonna slowly start to help yourself back to center. You can bring the soles of your feet together And just sit tall, take a couple breaths at center. And go ahead, slide your stack of support over to the second side. Right, so left side, or if you did the other one, just switch sides. Draw your right foot back and then left shin a little bit more parallel. Again, just play with the angles of knees, hips, so you find the place that feels right for you. And then twist over to your left, hand on either side of that support. And as you start to fold in, just press a little bit more into your left hand so the ribs roll back and then fold forward. Let the back hip lift. Take your arms, your hands, wherever they're most comfortable once you're settled in. And you can keep your gaze forward towards your knees or look back behind you. Again, if that feels like a strain on the neck, don't. Err on the gentler side. Right, so it doesn't mean you won't feel any sensation at all, especially when we start to take our hips into ranges of motion that we don't always do throughout the day. It just means you're not looking for that deep tissue massage. Right, if you've ever had those, the ones that you just have to breathe and soften, that you know is effective as long as you're not tensing up, right? And sometimes it's just working through those little sticky spots. And I feel like there are definitely those places in yin that can feel that way. And to just be able to breathe yet soften. But there's some days even that feels like a little too much. Then our bodies are craving a little bit more support. Take about 5 more breaths on this side. And again, help yourself all the way back up. Bring the soles of your feet together. Take a couple of breaths. All right, for this next pose, I'm going to give you a couple options. Again, just depending on where your range of motion is. So we're going to set up for a supported fish pose. And if you tend to be a little bit less flexible through the chest and the shoulders, I'm going to recommend using the pillows, right? Again, it's finding that place where there's a little bit more support. So you'd come to lie down, right, with your back to the pillows. That's definitely going to be the softer version. If, however, that feels like that's really just a little more restorative for me, then You can do this with your blocks if you have blocks. If not, just use the pillows. Right, this one long way, and then one underneath your head, whatever setting. Right, and so for some of us, this is going to be really yin and a lot of sensation. And for some of us, this is a really comfortable place to be. So it's about finding the right balance for you. And then you would lie down. That first block in between shoulder blades, second block to your head, whatever height. And whether you're on the pillows or the blocks, take your arms out somewhere where you're starting to create some space in your chest. But you want to make sure your forearms and your hands are still down on the mat. Right? Just so there's a softening, those muscles aren't having to work. And then if it feels not too much in your legs, you can take butterfly. Right? If you're on your pillows and you still have blocks nearby, you could slide blocks underneath thighs or knees. Or you could slide your pillows underneath your knees if you're on your blocks. And if that feels like that is pushing my edge of sensation today, do the opposite. Constructive rest pose, feet wide, knees together. Our edge point can look vastly different one person to the next. And sometimes it's not even the shape of the pose that matters, but how you support yourself and how you approach it. In general, I think that we need a different balance person to person. Some people need more rest in order to maintain that midpoint. And some of us need more movement, more activity, more sensation to draw us out of the softness. So it's not uncommon that it's not necessarily what you're doing, but how you're doing it. And if at any point the pose that you've chosen becomes too much, let yourself back out a little. And we're going to take about 5 more breaths here. And then as you're ready, if your knees are wide, help them back together. You can roll off of that support onto your side. And then from here, move slowly, but we're going to set up for Shavasana. So you want to have a little extra support. Maybe blocks under your knees, maybe a pillow under your knees or a pillow under your head. maybe a blanket. Especially if lying flat on your back tends to bring up any sensation in low back or hips. Give yourself that little extra love today. And once you're all set up and snuggled in, drop back through your eyes. And see if you can even take a moment to let your face soften. The jaw, temples, a little crease between the eyebrows we can get. Release your tongue from the roof of your mouth. And feel the back of your head settle back just a little heavier. And just let the weight of your body settle in. Find your rest here. And start to take some deeper breaths. With your next inhale, take a full stretch, reach your arms up overhead, lengthen out through your legs. And then draw your knees in towards your chest, roll to your side. And press yourself all the way back up to sitting. Once you get there, bring your hands together at your heart. And sit tall, lift heart to hands. Thank you so much for taking the time to find this balance in our practice today. Namaste.